Welcome to the Reasonable Southerner podcast. The South isn't all magnolias in the moonlight, but neither is it all racism and violence. We are just like you. My name is Frances Coleman. I share my insights about my life and yours. Here is what an acquaintance asked me last year. How dare you call yourself a Catholic and vote for Joe Biden? But here is what she meant to say. How can you vote for someone who supports abortion rights when the Catholic Church condemns abortion as a grave sin? The rest of the email had a decidedly vicious tone, and as I sometimes do with acidic and or combative emails, I ignored it. But with the kerfuffle over Texas' new abortion law, let's talk about the underlying question. I don't need my religion or my critics to tell me that abortion is a terrible thing. In my view, it's the immoral destruction of an unborn child whose life was created at conception. I wish that no woman in the history of the world had ever aborted or would ever abort her fetus. Women do abort fetuses, however, and despite some states' best efforts to prohibit or even criminalize the procedure, they will continue to. For various reasons, they do not want to have a baby. As for me, I can't wrap my head around the decision to get an abortion. How, I wonder, can a woman destroy the flesh of her flesh? That's a moral question. For the government to say, no, you can't have an abortion, raises an entirely different question that lies outside of morality. Can the government force a woman to remain pregnant and deliver a child against her will? And the answer is, or should be, no. It is not the role of the government, nor is it the role of the government to follow pregnant women around for the duration of their pregnancies to ensure compliance. Like it or not, continuing or aborting a pregnancy is a decision we must allow pregnant women to make. The current Texas law, which severely restricts abortion, was not upheld recently by the Supreme Court because the court announced that it has changed its mind on the constitutionality of a law that forbids abortion. The justices simply dealt with the law on procedural grounds. The law in Texas remains in force. It's not unusual for appellate courts to ditch an appeal on procedural grounds. In my state, it happens all the time. An appeal that lawyers have worked on for months comes back with a decision that simply says, affirmed, no opinion. That means that the appeals court agrees with the decision of the trial court. It also means that the court gave no reasoning for its decision and left everyone dealing with that appealed issue scratching their collective heads and wondering what the law is presently. The law on abortion was articulated in this country by another appeal out of Texas way back in 1973, when the Supreme Court said that a woman's right to not have a baby had to be balanced against the interest of the state in protecting the health of the mother. That's right, the court did not say that a fetus becomes a person at some point in the pregnancy. Most of the folks who talk about that case, that's Roe v. Wade, of course, have never read it. They don't get the part where the court said very plainly that if medical scientists, theologians, and social scientists can't decide when life begins, they couldn't either. The court did decide that there are some personal rights that are fundamental, and that a right to personal privacy, while not specifically articulated, it is, the Roe court ruled, implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. The issue of the abortion rant, and I will not qualify what is happening now as a debate, is about what the government can require its citizens to do and not do. While it is surprising that the very supporters of the latest Texas law are the same people who don't think the government has a right to tell them to get vaccinated against a disease that has killed thousands of people and has cost us a lot of money. They do not, naturally, see any problem with saying someone can't get an abortion. While the Catholic Church does and says a lot of foolish things, there is one question that the Church has answered correctly. The Church opposes abortion because our Church believes that all life is sacred. Until a very few years ago, the Church said capital punishment was permissible when it was the only way to protect society. The Church, under the leadership of Pope Francis, finally called that statement out for the hogwash that it is. Executing criminals does not protect anyone. There is a plain logical disconnect in thinking that says abortion must be prevented because life is sacred, and at the same time says putting a needle in the arm of a criminal and killing him is permissible. That distinction is not about the sacredness of life. It's about choosing which lives are valuable and which are not. If some women choose abortion over birth, then may God have mercy on them. People of faith believe that God knows us far better than we know ourselves, so we can hope that the Creator has immeasurable compassion for people who make such a terrible choice. As for us mere mortals, in particular those of us who believe abortion is wrong, a question. Are we doing everything we can to encourage women to carry their pregnancies to term? Do we support organizations that provide financial assistance to women who fear they can't afford to have the child? After all, babies need clothes, diapers, food, cribs, and supplies, and they and their mothers need pre- and postnatal health care. They may also need a place to live, and the mother may need help finding a job or earning her GED. In our daily lives, do we encourage pregnant women and young mothers, or do we stare at the ones with several children and a baby bump and mutter that we don't understand why some women just keep on having babies? Do we support making birth control widely available so that there are fewer unplanned and unwanted pregnancies? On its website, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that in 2018, healthcare providers reported 619,591 legal induced abortions. How many of those could have been avoided if young people had had access to sex education and birth control, and how many might have been avoided if people who are opposed to abortion had acted in a spirit of compassion and not condemnation? States can pass all the anti-abortion laws they like, and pro-life groups can continue to work hard to overturn Roe v. Wade. In some form or fashion, however, abortion will remain a reality, and it's in the public interest for the government to regulate it. Those who expect the legal system to stop abortion are copping out. It's easier to board a bus and go to a rally than it is to try to understand what compels a woman to choose to have an abortion. In a time when safe and effective birth control is available, and when Americans have turned to unwanted children overseas to adopt, there's a real solution to the problem. It does not lie in the courts. The court's decision on this issue is motivated by politics alone, not by any deeply held belief that overturning Roe v. Wade is going to prevent the 600,000-plus abortions that were conducted last year. States that permit abortion will continue to do so. It's not hard to imagine that the fee for such a procedure will include a round-trip plane ticket from wherever the woman wanting the abortion happens to be. It's not in the public interest for the government to force women to carry babies to term, even if the government could actually do that. If you find abortion morally repugnant, as I do, then by all means, let's take positive steps to reduce the demand for it. In the process, we'll be doing the Lord's work, literally. I'm Frances Coleman. I've worked for newspapers for more than 45 years, from Texas to my native Louisiana, and finally to my home near Mobile, Alabama. I've been a reporter, an editorial writer, a columnist, and an editorial page editor. I've commented on the BBC, been a guest on the Rachel Maddow Show, and had my column distributed nationwide. If you like this podcast, please follow it. It's free, and even if you don't like it, I hope you'll find it thought-provoking.